Thanks very much for the invitation to contribute to this panel, John and Tanu. The image you can see here was created by Paul Klee in 1920 and is called Angelus Novus, referred to by Walter Benjamin as the angel of history. And I was so delighted to see this particular artwork, John, when advertising this panel. And the synchronicity is pretty incredible, as we've only recently discussed this image in an online reading group where we're discussing Karin agential realism. And my input today has really benefited from these discussions with colleagues, and I will put the link to the reading group in the chat. Now, Benjamin writes about the angel of history in his thesis 9. Barely known during Klee's life, it has become the artist's most famous work, largely because it has passed the hands of 4 well-known continental philosophers before entering the collection of the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, where it has been kept since 1987. Now, Benjamin bought the painting for 1,000 Deutschmark in 1921. Imagine that. He hung it in his office in Berlin and refers to the angel as his most treasured possession. Now, why might this be? And you might wonder, why is that important for a panel on childism and philosophy? The angel stands suspended in a yellowish field. His wings are grand, but inadequate, and he seems trapped between forward and backward motion. His face is turned towards the past. A storm is blowing from paradise and has caught the angel's wings with such violence that the angel can't close them. This storm irresistibly propels him into the future. This storm, Benjamin wrote, is what we call progress. For Benjamin, the angel is history itself, helplessly turned the wrong way as it gazes at the wreckage of the past. For Benjamin, the beautiful future promised by Marxism turned out to be somewhat different when the Second World War began. In 1940, as a Jewish refugee, he committed suicide before reaching the Spanish border, because he sort of knew he would be sent to Auschwitz concentration camp. Now, it is claimed that Hannah Arendt saved the manuscript about the painting, and the painting itself, Benjamin handed to the author, Georges Bataille, who looked after it for a while and then handed it to Theodor Adorno, a fellow Frankfurter Schüler, who in turn handed it to Jewish philosopher Scholem. Now, Benjamin's passionate plea to the political left is to purge itself of the idea of progress and the developmental conception of history that was inherent in German idealism and interpolated into Marxism. Now, in the thesis, Benjamin identifies as progressivist temporality as homogeneous empty time, the continuous flow of time as it marches forward without regard to any external forces. He's critical of the idea that now is the thinnest slice of time, an empty speck, and each moment as being the same as all others. History tends to be seen as what happens in time, but time itself, so-called, is independent of history. Now let's look at the artwork more closely and see what we can learn from its materiality about Benjamin's critique and how it informs ideas about childism. It will explain why I chose to include the video you're now watching within the angel's body. It all has to do with time. And as we know, the concepts of child and adult are intricately entangled with temporalities and unial notions of time, for example, clock time. In fact, The angel of history is not a painting at all, and the materiality of its making is very important here. It was made by an oil transfer technique, a method of Benjamin's own invention. It involved slathering a piece of tracing paper with printer's ink, and then placing a drawing paper underneath and scratching the top paper with a needle to make an impression on the one below. Now, why does this matter, and for whom? A real inspiration for my recent scholarship has been Karin diffracting through water Benjamin's work in a 2017 publication. And for both of them, questions of time and justice are inseparable. The potential for justice for Barad exists in the thick now of the present moment, of what Benjamin calls now time, Jetztzeit, and not in pinning political hope on some future time. Now, Benjamin contends that a revolutionary chance in the fight for the oppressed past exists in this very structure of the thick now, a rupture in the continuum of time, a break from the unilinear conception of temporality as the continuous unfolding of the past into the future. Now, Karin suggests that the methodology of material deconstruction in order to blast open the continuum of history, says Benjamin, as a way of bringing in the energetics of the past into the present and vice versa. Now, deconstruction is a powerful methodology, rethinking time anew. So in the thick now, time is diffracted through itself. Past, present, and future unfold in infinite multiplicities. Each now is a quantum entanglement, troubling all binaries at the very core, including distinction between human and other than human, adult and child, particularly important for the notion of childism. Now, the release of energy sufficient to affect transformation marks the enormous revolutionary potential condensed into a single point, the thick now of the present. So what I would like to propose for this panel is that childism could involve troubling subjectivity full stop, not just child subjectivity. My research is about exploring the limits of human exceptionalism by acknowledging the role the adult human plays in what counts as knowledge, and by moving towards the notion of the inhuman. Now, this involves not taking chronological child and unilinear time as always already given, but by blasting clock time, and with it, developmentalism. In a recent interview with Hélène Cixous, Jacques Derrida argues that language needs to be undone from adult constructions as a particular kind of unlearning. So in that sense, deconstruction is childlike, but also the genius of childhood, says Derrida. A childlike deconstruction of concepts has little to do with age. Agential realism involves a returning to a childlike diffractive engagement with the world through questioning the meaning of concepts we tend to take for granted and investigating the work these concepts do, also politically. So what I argue is really that agential realism helps build different childlike relationships between questions and answers in the now. Thank you.